close. Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, with that, we'll turn it over to Ron Whitlatch as a working session. And go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. What we have here before you today is a utility system update. We haven't done this for a couple of years, and I know sometimes it's a little bit, it's not the most interesting subject, but I think it's some good information for all of you to know, keep up to date and up to speed with what's going on in our utility systems, where we're at financially. So we want to give you kind of a financial update on each of the respective systems, major accomplishments that have happened, and then also look at some of the upcoming priorities and challenges that we're going to face coming up. And of course, answer hopefully any questions that you may have as we go through it. Please feel free to stop me in a work session. More dialogue is better, so please feel free to stop me. So at any point in time, we can answer questions. So with that, let's start with the storm drainage utility. It's the smallest one we have. It was implemented several years ago. The drainage utility generates about $450,000 a year. A majority of these funds, approximately $350,000 a year, goes to operations and maintenance. Goes to cleaning lines, TVing lines, small repairs, and whatnot. Just to give you an idea, this year some of our accomplishments: the maintenance crews cleaned 15,000 feet of pipe. They did a bunch of catch basin installations downtown to fix some puddling. Cleaned 4,000 feet of ditches. Of course, we put the new storm system in on Russell Drive and Airport Road this year. Some of the upcoming projects that we've got: replace the existing Cheetah Lake underdrain pipe. That was on tap to be done in our water treatment plant project and was scheduled to be done last summer. And I'll get into the, as we go through a water treatment plant update, I'll get into the reasons why that wasn't done and where that's at. That's quite a challenge. Drainage master plan update with the canal. Mostly this is due to the agreement that we have with Albany. We agreed to update our drainage master plan. The question we have to ask is, do we want to do a citywide drainage master plan update? Our existing one was 1989. It's probably time to do that and just encompass this all in one master plan update. So that's coming up. And then we've got TMDL requirements, which is the total maximum daily loading for that's required by DEQ, basically construction stuff. So we're going to have to develop ordinances that deal with pre and post construction, similar to what we did on the Airport Road project. That was probably our first taste of this. In order to get our permit, you notice we've got those bioswale drainage structures out there for infiltration and water quality. So some of that stuff's going to be coming to us now. We're going to be required to do it in order to meet our TMDL requirements. Even though we're not an MS4 community, in order to meet the TMDL requirements, we're going to have to do that stuff. So we're going to try and go through that process over the next year or two and develop ordinances. It's probably going to require a committee of people, folks, developers and whatnot, so that we can get the ordinances right, so that we don't encumber too much, rather than just make a bunch of rules and whatnot. So
what's TMDL again?
Total maximum daily loading. It deals with runoff issues, heat coefficients, stuff, and it was basically the Willamette River stuff, dealing with the Willamette River.
Is that state regulations?
Yes, it's
okay.
EPA and DEQ.
And DEQ.
Yeah. So we've been working on it. We've been working on the plan. You guys have seen some pieces of it. We're actually behind in the plan, not to any detriment, but we do need to generate the ordinances at some point so that we can come back. And those are pre- and post-construction ordinances. They will have a big impact on development, have a big impact on how we do our projects. For instance, those bioswales and all that's incorporated into it. The beehive manholes, that was probably a $350,000 to $400,000 hit on the Airport Road job. So that's gonna trickle down everywhere.
So you're looking at calendar year this year for those ordinances?
Yeah, we're going to work on it. I'm a little short-staffed right now, so it just depends on whether we can get to that or not. DEQ hasn't came knocking down my door yet, so I'm taking that as a good sign. So we'll get to that as we get time and get those implemented. Any other questions on the storm drainage? It's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, most of it's used for maintenance. It's going to be a challenge to fund all this stuff. Funding will be a challenge with only generating maybe $100,000 a year for capital. An example, the under drain, not sure exactly on cost yet. We can get into that a little bit more, but the master plans, they're $250,000 a piece. I'm not sure on the TMDL. We may have to hire a consultant to do some of that work, but that wouldn't be near the scope. But funding will be a challenge. We'll just have to work through it.
Have there been any issues regarding our agreement with Albany in and around storm drainage that's of note?
No, actually things have been really well. In fact, we met as two staffs in December, and we'll be bringing a memo back to you guys, I think in March. I'm going to try and get it back in March, of just some time frame changes, just on both community sides, and just as a update to you. Albany has updated their council as well. So, but all has gone well with that. They're happy with it. Any other questions on storm drainage? Okay. So the water utility, that's the big one. We get about 5,700 meters throughout town. It varies depending on who moves out, who moves in, but 5,700 is a pretty good number to go by. About 79 miles of water main within the city. That's a lot of water main. And then last year we treated, and I just used kind of a year over year, 760 million gallons of water treated in 2017. So that's a lot of water to treat. We're on track this year right now based on my stuff and what Matt and I have been working on to collect what was projected on the 4.9 million. Another thing that will happen starting December of 2019, we start the payment back of the loans for the water treatment plant, and that's about 1.25 million. And that's what rates were raised for, and so that money's there. It's just, that's when that starts, that debt service starts. So, major accomplishments this year, we installed water line on Russell Drive, Airport Road. Also installed the new water main out to the water treatment plant. So those are all in. Our maintenance guys repaired 24 different service lines. We're finding that our old copper service lines are failing more and more. That's not necessarily a corrosion issue. It's more of a construction methods issue, I think, is what we're finding with the compaction on the 3/4 inch minus. So we've since switched, I think a couple of years ago, to a PEX pipe, which is a lot more flexible and forgiving. So we've switched that and don't use copper anymore. I had 12 mainline repairs, and they also installed about 700 new touch read meters as we're doing our meter change-out program. So they've been busy in the water side, getting things done. So it's probably a good point to give you an update on the water treatment plant with water, since the water treatment plant is the biggest capital project we've ever undertaken. Currently, we're on schedule to begin producing water 2018, December 2018. So all looks good in schedule. I just got out of a meeting this morning where we're still actually ahead of schedule by a few days. I don't know how they get that. That's pretty impressive to me that they can look at that and know that. But and it is paper, but so we're on there. Majority of the underground utilities have been installed, meaning the yard piping, all the stuff that goes with that. Foundations are up, frame of the building's up. It's actually being sided right now. They're starting to put electrical runs in the building right now, and they'll start pulling wires when the roof's on, which is projected to be, I think, right around the first part of April. So things are moving along on that. And then, of course, the next few months will focus primarily on mechanical. To give you an idea of what the next few months will encompass, we've spent probably close to $9 million on the project so far. We're projecting to be about $21 million by June 30. So it's going to get really crazy. And a lot of it's equipment, too, that cost. But that'll really start ramping up, too. And I got a few pictures. That's looking at the west side of the building. So if you're looking at it, you'd be facing River Road right there. The siding's going up, and the doors are all in for that, doorways. This is the south side, which is now done. This is the admin area. This will be where the control room, office, and like the restroom and whatnot will be right there on the front. It's kind of a little bit hard to see, but you can see the lower roof line on that. And then this is the settling basins. This is where all the backwash water off the filters goes. Goes out there, decants, and then a majority of the water, if not all of it, will be infiltrated into our infiltration basins, so there won't be hardly any runoff leaving the site. And last, this is a picture of our intake, a raw water intake. That's looking at it from you'd be out in the river looking back at it. That's the back wall of it. You see how it's kind of sloped there. And that's really starting to come together too. They'll start pouring the tops of that and putting screens on and whatnot. So it's really coming along well. Yes?
My question is, how much longer is that stoplight going to be there?
I'm thinking I'm just going to leave it up there for you. No, it's hopefully, I would think that probably by September. Yeah, so close to that. So, continued. Major challenges today. Oh, yeah.
You got a building coming up on the intake out there.
Yes.
What is that building?
That is the raw water electrical building, and really all that houses is the MCCs, basically the brains that run the pumps over on the other side. So it's a fairly small building, but that's going up, and it'll house most of the electrical gear in there. That's all that will.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So major challenges to date. One of the biggest things, we started the project with 70% design drawings, which is no surprise. We did this in order to meet the 2017 in-water work period. We did not want to lose that window this year. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been anywhere near as far along as we are now. So that's been a challenge, to get those drawings updated and make sure that everybody's on board. Sladen put contingencies and allowances in their GMP. So far all that's been covered, and we haven't had any major issues. Probably the biggest issue we've had is the bore of the 42-inch casing for the canal, for our raw water line. We started that back in, I want to say about the first part of August, and thought we had the depth right, had dealt with all the agencies, and ended up losing the bottom of the canal through the bore. And what ended up happening was we had geotech done all the way around it, but the actual material underneath the canal was substantially different. It was huge, giant cobbles, and what happened when we ran that casing through there, or started to run the casing through there, it had failed. So the bottom of the canal gave out, and so we basically had an open conduit for the canal to run back into our trench, which is never a good thing. So at that point, we were stopped by Albany. Of course, we stopped it because it was unsafe, and then had to go back to the drawing board and came up with a new plan. Had to go through permitting agencies, and I don't know, you've got the Corps of Engineers. We had to do a whole new evaluation on for SHPO for historic features, because the canal is considered a historic feature now. And so we had to go through all that process, and we lost about 6 to 8 weeks. And then the conditions that they put on us were very substantial. In the meantime, we also were required to do 2 defishings of our work area, which was regulated by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, because there's a native trout that lives in the canal. Even though it's got a fish screen on the end of it to where it comes in. So that costs a lot of money. So what we ended up with, we had an original change order for both crossings, when we did both crossings. And that was $682,000. That was when we first signed the GMPs. And just the actual cost for this water line crossing was $870,000. So we've still got another one to go. But the balance of that, so we're going to use the existing change order, so there'll be no cost to the contract with that. And then Sladen's agreed to take the $187,000 out of their contingency, which is also part of the GMP. So at this point, there's no net increase to the contract itself. There's going to be when we do the underdrain. In fact, we were talking about that this morning, coming up with a new design for the underdrain, and I think they've got some really good ideas to save us a little bit of money. It won't be near this cost, or at least we're hoping it's not near that cost. And it shouldn't be. The reason you've got that kind of cost associated with that is you essentially did two different styles of, you bored it, you went to bore it, you almost had it all done, canal failed, and you had to go back to plan B where they drove piles. We had probably $70,000 to $80,000 just in rented equipment over that time. And then on top of that, when you add the agency's time into it and making us go through all the different hoops that we had to go through for a change in design, let's say, it cost us about 6 weeks of standby time on some of that stuff. So it was there.
Should we have known, or should somebody have known about the material that was underneath there, or is it just chance we took?
In talking with Albany staff, they've never seen anything like it, and they've worked on the canal all over. And that's why we did the geotech borings right there at the canal. We did not drill in the canal per se. And what it was just an old fill area that all the way along there is just a big cobbly fill area. So I don't know, unless we would have bored in the canal, which in and of itself is really difficult, I don't know that you would have known that. I'm not sure it would have changed our method anyway at that point. My personal opinion was we should have just kept going, but we were stopped by them and the agencies because at that point there was no risk to flooding. I mean, we're in a cut section of the canal, but everybody got a little excited when FERC gets involved. Everybody gets pretty excited, and let's just say they weren't the easiest to work with.
Sometimes.
It was not fun. No, there was a lot of not fun there. Let's leave it at that. But so anyway, we'll be coming back for the underdrain crossing, and that will be taken out of contingency and contractor contingency as well. And that we're working through those details right now to do that. But at this point, just so you're aware, that has been the biggest challenge of the project so far. Even having 70% drawings hasn't been near the challenge that this is. It just didn't come together like it was supposed to. And anytime you put a crane out there for 6 weeks and driving piles and having to drive piles twice, it becomes extremely expensive. So,
Do you have an estimate of what the cost for the next phase is?
no, I don't. We're looking through that. They're pulling the numbers together right now. They've got several ideas. One of the ideas is to trough across the work area so that we're not having to, what we ended up doing last time was driving sheet piles, half cofferdams, and then pulling those piles and driving half cofferdams again to get the pipe across. And once we had started boring it, since we had the steel casing in there, we ended up having to use the boring contractor to continue that work. Because there was really no way to get at the pipe to push it forward. So it should be substantially less. I mean, I can't see it being that much more. I'm thinking about half that, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, but they're pulling the numbers together, and we'll know a little bit better once they pull those numbers together. So. Any other questions on that? Okay. So going through the financial status of the treatment plant, Sladen carried $920,000 in contingencies. I think I was looking at our notes today. They've used about 20% of that. We've used about 25% of our allowances in the GMP as well. So we're doing well on that, considering where we're at in the project. And once we go into regular section, we have a $100,000 redesign amendment to the Corolla contract, and essentially what that's covering is all the environmental stuff that we had to do with the canal. It was actually requested that Foundation Engineering be on site every day by not only FERC but Albany while we went through this. So that was about a $50,000 bill of this. So, and then it also includes some of the deep fishing. So we'll get to that when we have the regular session, but that'll be coming before you as well. And that's coming out of the city contingency that we have, which is not much, but I think we're still running somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 in our contingency pool, which is, it seems like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but it's a pin drop on a project this size. It's very small. We're continuing to work with our finance department. Matt and I have been working actually all week. We're trying to put next year's budget together and making sure that my numbers match what's in the budgeted amounts. And so far, everything looks good. And again, there'll be additional change orders that come up, but everything so far has been able to stay within what was approved for the project. I really don't see any additional funding unless something really goes sideways needed. It's all there. It's just a matter of getting it done and going through the process. Anything else there? Okay. So future for water utility. As you remember, I indicated that we'd be paying back the water treatment plant loans. So we're projecting that we'll have $250,000 to $300,000 a year left to go to capital after we pay those loans. We've got probably $6 to $8 million worth of line replacement that needs to be done over the next 10 to 15 years. Are we going to get to all that? No. We're probably going to get to the worst stuff. Things like the URD help substantially put the airport road and Russell Drive water lines in. It was fortunate there that didn't have to come out of water. Continuing to work on our unaccounted for water loss. It seems to fluctuate a lot. A lot of it goes back to line replacement, service repairs. It's amazing what a little service leak and how much water loss that can generate. So we're continuing to work on that all the time. Next year, the operation of both plants. So basically December of 2018, we'll start the new one. CH Tim Hill will be under contract to run the old one through the next fiscal year. We'll keep that active until probably at least 6 months. So we make sure we work all the bugs out of a new plant. We know there'll be some, so it's just a matter of getting that. And then city staff will take over operation of the new water plant, as we've discussed before, and right after that. And then what's not on here, at some point we need to have a discussion, and I don't know if that falls under facilities master plan or what, and I think Gary alluded to it last council meeting. We need to determine what we're going to do with that property. Is it worth city hanging on to? Should it be sold? And that's a decision that you guys will have to come up with, and we'll provide some input and see what we can come up with there.
By the way, what is our water loss right now, average?
I didn't look before I came over, but at some points last year we were running in the 30s, 40s. We did a water, what do you call it, system leak detection, I guess you would say, maybe 2 years ago. And they found some substantial leaks, and our guys have been going after them. Some of it could be in the way we're accounting for it versus what we're showing being output. So we're looking at all kinds of different things. I don't know exactly what it is right now, but it was high. It was high enough to where Water Resources, when they looked at our water conservation plan, said, hey, you guys need to really look at this, and that's why we took on the study to look at that. And our guys are actively fixing them, but it's really hard to tell until they surface. You can do a lot of these leak detections, and they get you close, and you got to investigate where they're coming from. And a lot of it's services. You can have little leaks that generate a lot of water if you start doing the math on the pressures that we run. So, yeah, we're chasing them. But it comes down to line replacement. We've still got a lot of old AC and steel lines that they leak. So. Can you hear? Okay. So, any other questions on water treatment plant, water utility? Anything there? Okay. I know it's exciting. It's really exciting, but it's good information. Next is the sewer utility. We got about approximately 5,650 sewer accounts, 61 miles of sewer main. Treated 1.7 billion gallons of sewer last year. That's a lot of sewage. And that's based on OMI, what they've supplied to us, or CHM Hill, excuse me. Sewer utilities on track to meet projected revenue of about $5.1 million, looking at where we're at today. So we're on track with our financial projections for this year. Last year's accomplishments, our maintenance guys cleaned over 22,000 feet of line, and I think it was actually more than that, probably upwards of 40. Some of it didn't get put into my report. Videoed about 38,000 feet. We are continuing to see an increase in residents using our sewer lateral program. It's very popular. We have a lot of lateral replacements. I think we allocate about $90,000 to it every year, and it gets used up on average.
In our, does that help in the leaking or the
Yes,
water loss?
that's the no. It helps in the infiltration. So we're replacing these aging pipes that are increasing flows at the wastewater treatment plant. So that's what that's intended for. We're finding a lot of them are complete failures. People have no options. So it's been a good program. It definitely gets used. Multiple minor repairs throughout the city. I mean, main lines that plug, they have root issues, or whether they had a crack in them or whatnot. The guys are out replacing and repairing a lot of that stuff. Our small sewer replacement last year was E Street from the canal to 7th Street. It was a complete failed sewer. Most of the laterals had broken off and were essentially going into the ground out by the sewer main. So that was good to get that cleaned up. And then, of course, we installed new sewer mains on Russell Drive and Airport Road with that project. So we're putting additional new materials in the ground out there. Sewer utility capital projects. So what's coming up? Really, there was no big projects in sewer this year, but what's coming up is the next phase of the West Side Interceptor. Limits basically from Airway to Oak Street down to Walker and 6th. This is what, when the rate adjustment started, I don't know, probably 7 to 8 years ago, this was part of that to get to this point at Walker and 6th Street to provide relief to the existing West Side Interceptor and open up that piece down to Walker to development. It's very close to being funded. We've got money set aside in sewer SDCs, and we have money set aside in sewer capital for that. So we're working really hard at that. What our intent is to probably put that out in an RFP for design. Since we've got so many different projects going on right now, I'm not sure that we want to tackle that. Maybe have that designed by a consultant, and hopefully we'll get an RFP out for that here, I'm hoping by July, so that we could be potentially ready to go. And we're looking at options, on my ballpark, just looking on LIM's estimate, so many feet of sewer, is that we're roughly anywhere from $500,000 to $750,000 short of doing the project. So one of the ideas that we're kind of kicking around is potentially borrowing from the street SDC fund in order to do that. It would take us probably at least 2 years to generate that kind of revenue in order to do the project if we waited. And I'm thinking, based on what we're seeing with inflation, we may never catch that. So it may make sense to do that. We'll have a funding package put together to bring back to the City Council when we get to that point. But that's just some kind of out there thinking about as a potential for funding it and getting it in, since it does seem to be, it is a big issue. We're currently updating the West Side Interceptor model. We did a study in 2007 that basically said West Side Interceptor, the existing one, is at or above capacity. I can't imagine that that's changed, but we are updating the model again, and what we're really looking for are for some short-term solutions to allowing development on the south end of town without the West Side Interceptor. And that's become, we've listened to a lot of developers over the last 6 to 8 months have come in and, hey, we want to build this subdivision down here, and sewer is, it's a monster for them to get all the way down there. You're looking at probably $8 to $9 million to complete it, and a majority of it's completed by the time you get down to the south end of town. So we're looking at if there are any options, to what would they be with this model update. Kind of running some different scenarios. What we don't want to get into the situation of is telling somebody, yes, you can develop South Main, where a majority of the sewer comes up from the south end of town, is only a 12-inch pipe. And I would feel, I don't think it'd be a good decision on our part to allow further development until we know that down there. The last thing we want is raw sewage on the ground every time it rains. Not only that, DEQ would be really upset with us. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I am saying that we're updating the model so that we can use real numbers, not projected numbers on what I&I is doing to our system and what these flows are going to do to our system, so that we know, so that we've got a good grasp on it, so that it's not just, I call them book numbers, some number you get out of a book on what you should use for an I&I rate. We're going to use actual numbers. And so it's going to take us probably 6 months to a year to get all this data collected. We're going to leave the monitors in the ground and get a good idea of what our system's doing before we can really move forward and then look at alternatives to the West Side Interceptor, because there is no funding allocated to build that last piece. I mean, that's strictly be development at this point. So unless the city council chose to do something different, but we can discuss that at some time. So that's kind of where we're at on that. We'll get the next phase in. I'm pretty confident that we can get that in, hopefully moving forward next year, early next year. And that next phase, just to give you an order of magnitude, it's about 8,000 feet of pipe. Some of it's 23 to 26 feet deep. And we're somewhere in the ballpark of $4 to $5 million, just looking at that. If we do it in that big of a chunk, we hope to get a little bit of economy of scale. Getting one contractor on, it's a little more. There's other things we can do. We can stop short of that, but it doesn't provide the relief we need. So that's kind of, we need to get it to that point in order to provide that relief. So that's what the proposal is anyway. One of the other things, capital-wise, solids handling at the wastewater treatment plant. Currently, we're at capacity with solids, or close to, which in turn is probably decreasing our wastewater treatment plant capacity with that many solids there. We're trying to determine if the cannibal system is working through those issues. And we're likely going to need a future solids handling project in order to meet permits and future growth. One of the things that is kind of helping us this year is Albany is, we signed an agreement with Albany to take our biosolids this year should we need them to. So they stepped up and are excited about it and got approvals. And so should we need it, we've got a place to take it.
They're excited about taking our biosolids?
Yeah, they were excited to help us. I don't know why. It was their wastewater staff. I think they're just, yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was nice.
Wastewater geeks.
Yeah, there you go. So there's that. Anything else on sewer, sanitary? I kind of got a summary of major takeaways here on the big stuff, and this is the real reason. Schedule and finances are on track for the water treatment plant. We're going to take over operations of the new treatment plant, and we need to continue our line replacement. Wastewater treatment plant, west side interceptor phase is critical. Next one, and our funding is close. And it's likely that until the west side interceptor is installed on the south end of town, all the way around, that development's going to be impacted, and it may or may not be able to grow down there. Go ahead.
How is that done? Is that done at Walt's level? When someone comes in, do you guys get together on a new development and look at that?
Yeah, we do.
Realize that there's just not enough capacity.
One of the fortunate things, and I'm thinking of a couple of different properties down there, when they annexed into the city, the 2007 sewer report was part of the annexation, and it was well known when they annexed that the ability to get sewer is there, but the cost is huge, and it's big. So that's been documented in the annexation reports. And then Walt and I, of course, talk about this as well. And Walt and Gary and Jason and I have had several meetings on this just to discuss this issue and know that it's not really the position we want to be in, but unfortunately we don't want to. Like I said, I would feel bad if we allowed that, especially fully knowing it, and we had sewage on the ground. I think that would make some people very upset that happened. So we're looking at ways that we can try and eliminate that. And maybe with this new phase, once we get down to Walker and 6th Street, we might be able to put an overflow in there and capture some of that. That's one of the things we're going to have them look at. So if I did an overflow manhole that would take it to the new system, because that's kind of where the system comes together and starts to head north. Maybe that's enough to buy us some time, I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. It's very dynamic in how it acts, and a lot of it depends on back-to-back rainstorms. I mean, sewage itself is it's pretty typical. There's no change in that. It's the infiltration that changes it big time. So, but I wouldn't recommend trying to go tackle. I mean, we'll tackle what we can of the I&I, but you're talking major costs to go back and try and tackle all your lines. And the reality is, when pipes are that deep and you're using concrete manholes, I'm not sure you ever get it. I know Sweet Home went through that process, and they're still having to upgrade the size of their plant, according to their public works director. So, yeah. So, any other questions that I can answer about our utilities, where we're at, things you'd like to see? Anything.
When do we get another rate comparison?
For?
Water, sewer?
Comparing
to other like jurisdictions?
We just
always seems to be a popular question for the public.
did that. Didn't we just do that? How long ago was that?
The last update was a little more than a year ago, I think.
Oh no, we did one about 3-4 months ago.
I was going to say no more than 6 months ago.
Yeah, we did an analysis.
I don't remember seeing it.
But that was more of a social media thing.
Yeah, it was something to do with that.
Yeah.
We have one. I have one right now that's gosh, it's not more than a year old.
Okay.
Yeah. We can put that out.
Yeah, if you could provide it to everybody on council, it'd be good.
Sure. We can email that out. Absolutely. I thought it was.
That could have been maybe that one meeting where we thought people were going to show up and talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
That one meeting and no one showed up.
Yeah, it hasn't been long ago. Oh, look, we've got it in our files. It's pretty easy to do. So, anything else?
Thank you and staff for all your hard work on this.
Well, thanks for bearing with me. I know it's not the most interesting stuff, but I just like everybody being informed.
Anything else on that? Okay. Seeing none, we'll adjourn the work session. Thank you, Ron. You betcha. And I will call to order the City Council regular session. We've already done the flag salute. Can we have the roll call by the clerk, please?
Councilor Boland?
Here.
Counselor Elliott,
Here.
Counselor Fisher,
Here.
Counselor Furlow,
Here.
and Counselor Grizzle.
Here.
Counselor Reeskamp is absent today.
Okay, first up, we have a consent calendar. We have the agenda for today's meeting. The board minutes from the Lebanon Planning Commission, January 17, 2018. We have 2 liquor license applications, Lynn Lane's change of ownership and Oregon Mini Mart change of ownership off premises.
Move to approve consent calendar.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Consent calendar is approved. We have an opportunity for public comments. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment? Seeing no one from the public, we'll move on to the regular session. Number 1, we have the amendment to the Corello contract. Ron Whitlatch.
Welcome back.
Well, thanks.
It's been a
I
while.
kind of hinted on this during the work session. Basically, we've got an amendment to the Corolla contract for a lot of the environmental stuff that happened with the canal. A few other things with this. I believe the amendment total cost on this, we had that, was $97,462 total, and it comes with the scope of work and the comparison there. Really should be noted that, a typical project of this size, looking back at them, anywhere from 11 to 13% is a typical construction inspection cost. We're sitting at 6.2 with them. We're able to save that. Mike Trippett and Colson Shanks are city employees, and they're out there every day, and they're doing a great job of managing the project and doing what needs to be done out there. So that's saved a substantial amount of money by having them out there. And Colson's learning. He's brand new, but he's only been with us for about 6 months, but he's doing a great job. Great job. So anyway, with that, we would recommend a motion to approve this.
Ron, can you clarify the, what was it, the concrete,
Seal slab.
whatever that.
Seal slab.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, let's start. So you dig down the intake, right, in this big cofferdam, and you dig down to bedrock, which I can't remember the depth of the excavation. It was enormous. So you pump all the garbage out. You get and you're down on this bedrock, and you keep it clean. And then they take and they pour what we call concrete over the top of that, concrete seal slab. So basically a platform to build the intake structure on. So otherwise you'd have an odd-shaped floor to it. I think that seal slab pour was upwards of 600 yards of concrete. Took them all day. What we found after they got it done is there was a few soft spots in there, and nobody can figure out why. So we had to grout inject those. So we wanted to have our guy, Foundation Engineering, on site to make sure that the grouting was going as planned. So that's what that's for. So you get some soft spots. You maybe get some areas where it didn't quite seal against the rock. So we drilled it while we were drilling the tiebacks.
Fill that area.
You drill it as you're drilling the tiebacks, and then once you get to the spot where those two meet, you shoot that with grout, or basically pressure grout that, so that you get a seal in there, so we don't have water penetrating up between the bedrock and the seal pour.
Shifting the whole.
Yes. Basically, you could float this thing if we had a big flood. So the seal pour helps anchor it. So from the seal pour, you've got tiebacks that go through the seal pour. I think they were either 30 or 40 feet back into the bank that tie back in, and then they're tensioned real tight, kind of like you would on a bridge. And that's what holds that thing into place. Because on a big flood event, you could technically, if that thing wasn't full of water, it'd act like a ship. If there was ever some reason for that too, and you could float the intake structure, potentially. So that's what that was for.
All right.
Okay, and I have my question,
Okay.
which is fish salvage.
Yes.
What is fish salvage?
Oh,
What does the term mean?
I have got to learn a lot about fish salvage. So anytime you build a cofferdam, especially out in a salmon-bearing river, you have to do what you call a fish salvage, which is, to what I determined, you got 3 guys from Seattle that come down that are fish salvage experts. I'm trying to keep this. And they wear, for lack of better terms, look like Ghostbuster backpacks, and they sting the water, and they look for salmon fry. Fortunately, we didn't find any salmon fry, and they had to do that twice. So we sandbagged the first time, and then we had to do it again when we actually built the cofferdam. The smart fish all left when they heard the pounding, and we had to do the same thing on the canal. It's a big cost. It's a big cost. Unfortunately, with a federal grant, we're kind of handcuffed a little bit on some of this stuff.
So the term salvage is more of testing to see if there's fish? Is that?
Oh, no.
related?
They actually net them and put them back out into the river if they find them.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I see. So they're recovering them.
If they find them.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I was not understanding. Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's what that's for. I got to learn a lot about that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. I hope I never have to learn any more about it.
How do you apply for that job?
I don't know. I don't even know if I'd want it. Yeah.
Any other questions?
And we didn't get invited to a fish fry.
Yeah.
All right, seeing no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move for approval of amendment number 9, the Carollo contract.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Carrillo contract amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Ron.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council.
Any items from council? Public comments? Nobody from the public. Items from press? Nothing from the press. Next scheduled meetings, March 14th, 6 p.m., regular session. April 11th, 6 p.m., regular session. And today we are adjourned.